Louisiana versus all y'all. Jarrett Roser with another LSU camp update, which will actually be our last update from LSU camp. It's Wednesday, August 21st, and this morning was the last opportunity heading into the season for media to have access to watch some of practice. The Tigers will shift into their typical game week routine next week, starting with that midday Monday Brian Kelly presser as the Tigers prepare for that season opening trip next weekend, heading to Las Vegas to face the USC Trojans. And so football season is just about here. But in terms of these final updates, final camp updates from today, might as well start with some of the, potentially most notable news in terms of just some of the guys that were sidelined, both, some bad news of seeing some guys on the sideline, but good news hearing from Brian Kelly after practice that everything seems minor. We saw Miles Frazier, the standout offensive lineman, returning starter on that offensive line. Whit Weeks, the younger of the Weeks brothers at linebacker. Chris Hilton, the speedy wide receiver. Sage Ryan, the returning starter defensive back, working a lot at corner throughout this fall camp. They were all on the side of practice today. Also, think I saw Kylan Billiot at one point off to the side. And so those guys all, again, we didn't see active today, but everything from Brian Kelly's presser tells us that it's all just small camp bumps and bruises. They're expecting all those guys back here in the next couple of days by this weekend. And so they're expecting to have their full complement of weapons on both sides of the ball heading into that season opening week of preparation for those USC Trojans. Really nice note to get anytime you get through camp healthy is big. Brian Kelly talking during his post-practice press conference about all of the emphasis that the program has put on to sports science and leaning on the NFL data and all of those things for the acclimatization process for the players and trying to limit as many injuries as possible. Obviously, some things happen sometimes, but just doing everything that they can to be able to have guys stay healthy and be ready to head into the season. So it seems like all of those things have worked out well, knock on wood, for guys heading into the season with that season opener next week. There was an interesting moment where just kind of in traffic, actually, during one of the team sessions, it seemed like Garrett Nussmeier may have stepped a little bit awkwardly on a teammate's foot. I don't know if it was an offensive lineman or a rusher or who, but he kind of, for a second, checked his ankle and foot and everything to make sure it was okay. And kind of caught my attention to, oh no, like hopefully this is okay. And next thing you know, Garrett steps back up and confidently completes his next 3 or 4 or 5 passes or whatever it was before handing the ball over to second team reps with Ricky Collins and company. And so that was fortunate certainly to see. And a couple of those catches were to Aaron Anderson, the receiver, former star from Edna Carr, who I thought had a great day, was probably the biggest eye catcher in terms of some of those offensive weapons around Nussmeier and that offensive line. Great day for him. Thought Kyle Parker flashed, the second-year wide receiver from Texas. He had some big plays, including a really nice touchdown catch during a team portion of practice. Had a ball get away from him, so he had a little bit more ups and downs. Aaron Anderson, I thought, was super steady. All those tight ends stepping up with huge plays. Again, we've talked about the tight ends so much throughout camp. Mason Taylor with a great one-handed catch over the top of the defense down the left sideline for a touchdown. And we saw Pimpton and Trey'Dez Green both making plays as well, and continue to see the ability for the Tigers to use those guys with a lot of versatility with Pimp at different points lining up for some snaps out of the backfield. And so really encouraging there. That offensive line group, mentioned Miles Frazier sidelined in a boot today. So Tyree Adams, the redshirt freshman from St. Augustine down in New Orleans, was working a lot at right guard with DJ Chester at center and Garrett Dellinger at left guard, offensive lineman, ultimately doing what they do for a lot of the day. Although really one of the first eye-catching moments early in practice, and it was eye-catching for a couple of different reasons, was a big defensive lineman wearing number 90 breaking through the offensive line for a couple of tackles for loss. They ended up with 3 or 4, and immediately you look at the roster and look for number 90, assuming Jacobian Guillory. but it was actually Sean Washington, because one of the notes of practice today was as they prepare for USC, there were a lot of guys in different jerseys providing some scout team looks. And so Sean Washington, the former Warren Easton star, had a really, really nice practice today, flashing with, again, 3 or 4 different tackles for loss in the span of a team period or two of his scout team group working against first team offense, and really standing out with some of the things he was able to do. So as much as he may be on the scout team right now this week preparing for that USC game, Sean Washington continuing to put in work and looking about as good with the season approaching as he has all camp. Kind of continuing to go down the notes again, there were moments where it was tough to keep track of exactly who different people were, because people wearing different players wearing same jersey numbers, seeing a couple of different 4s out there, a couple of different 6s, and just trying to keep up with some of that. Looked like at one point PJ Woodland, the freshman corner from Mississippi, had a nice interception over on the far field, continuing what I think has been an overall really positive camp for him. Although with Sage Ryan out today, it looked more of J.K. Johnson working in that starting corner spot opposite of Ashton Stamps. We've seen obviously most of camp Stamps, Sage Ryan at those opposite corners, but J.K. Johnson has, I think, come on strong toward the end of this camp period, and got a nod with some first team reps today. Brian Kelly really sounded very high on the progress he's seen from the defense throughout camp today. When he talked to us after practice, talked a lot about that secondary coming together, and that I think what we'll all be excited to hear is that not a whole lot of, from his perspective, quote unquote, what the heck plays in terms of blown coverages and whatnot. Feels like he's seen guys covering a lot of ground and really competing and making for difficult throws for the quarterbacks, and getting their hands on the ball for deflections and interceptions each and every day. And I know they've wanted to see more consistency from the defense as a whole, and particularly so many young defensive backs as camp is going on. And I think they've seen some level of strides in that regard. Just trying to keep glancing through some of these notes and make sure I don't miss anything. I did write down more notes today, probably on some of the special team stuff than I necessarily had. I thought, and if you're looking for consistency, I don't know that we see it there yet necessarily with some of the punting by Blake Oceandorf, who I apologize for probably butchering his name, the Louisiana Tech transfer, as well as Badger Hargett, the young Louisiana native punter. Those two guys both getting some opportunities, having their moments, but having some that were not great kicks. Saw Xavier Thomas let a couple of punt return catches get away from him a little bit, which was a little bit concerning. He's somebody that has a chance to be as dynamic in that position as anyone, but obviously need to catch that ball cleanly. And that's where I thought Aaron Anderson was a little bit smoother today, as well as Javen Nicholas and also the aforementioned Parker, who saw with some reps catching some punts. So that about does it, both for this edition of LSU camp updates as well as pretty close to camp itself. Again, we'll be transitioning next week into more of that USC Trojans game week prep for the Tigers. So keep an eye out for that, as well as some of the other content hitting the channel a lot this week from the Cajuns. We'll have some more from Tulane coming, a lot of high school season preview and little check-ins with standout athletes from around the state, all hitting the channel here in the coming days. Really a lot of high school preview stuff coming over the next week and a half as we get that much closer to the little bit of late starting high school season this year. So thanks again for tuning in. Take a second, hit subscribe if you don't mind. I appreciate everyone that takes that time and hits that subscribe button. And as always, I'm Jarrett Roser. This is Louisiana versus all y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of the day, week, weekend. It's football season.